What makes the next phase dangerous is not darkness or silence, but delay. Hours have passed, and nothing has visibly improved. The assumption that power will return soon begins to anchor decision-making, and that assumption is the single most damaging error at this stage. The grid is not recovering in the background. It is struggling through a highly constrained process of re-energizing isolated segments, each requiring stable frequency, controlled load, and precise synchronization. Every attempt to reconnect sections too quickly risks another collapse, forcing operators to start again. The danger is that while restoration is technically possible, it is no longer guaranteed within a predictable time frame, and the longer instability persists, the more secondary systems begin to fail in ways that cannot be reversed simply by restoring electricity. To analyze this phase, you have to shift focus from generation to distribution. Even if power plants begin to come back online, transmission infrastructure must carry that energy safely across long distances. High-voltage transformers, some weighing hundreds of tons, are critical nodes in this process. They are not interchangeable components sitting in warehouses ready for deployment. Many are custom-built, with manufacturing lead times measured in months. If even a small percentage of these are damaged during the initial collapse due to overload or protective shutdown failure, the grid's ability to transmit power is severely reduced. This creates localized recovery at best, with large regions remaining disconnected indefinitely. The misunderstanding here is the belief that modern infrastructure is designed with redundancy that can absorb any failure. Redundancy exists, but it is optimized for isolated faults, not systemic collapse. Backup systems assume that the primary system remains mostly intact. When multiple layers fail simultaneously, redundancy becomes fragmented. A backup generator may supply a hospital, but if fuel supply chains are disrupted, that generator becomes a temporary solution with a fixed expiration. The same applies to water treatment facilities, data centers, and transportation hubs. Each has a buffer, but none are designed to operate in isolation for extended periods without resupply. The hidden science driving this phase is load balancing under constrained generation. When parts of the grid are restored, operators must carefully manage how much demand is allowed to reconnect. If too many consumers draw power at once, the sudden surge can destabilize frequency again. This is why restoration often occurs in stages, with rolling energization of circuits. However, in a widespread outage, demand is not evenly distributed. Entire regions may attempt to reconnect simultaneously once power is detected, creating unpredictable spikes. This phenomenon, known as cold load pickup, is significantly higher than normal demand because devices that were previously off all try to start at once, drawing more current than during steady-state operation. Evidence of cold load pickup has been observed in numerous restoration efforts, where initial re-energization caused unexpected overloads despite careful planning. Utilities account for this by gradually increasing load, but in large-scale outages, the complexity increases exponentially. Monitoring systems may be partially offline, communication between control centers may be degraded, and real-time data may be incomplete. Operators are effectively rebuilding a system while blind to portions of its behavior. The survival implications now move beyond infrastructure and into resource dependency. Water becomes the most immediate concern. Municipal water systems rely on electrically powered pumps to maintain pressure and distribute treated water. Without consistent power, storage tanks begin to deplete. Gravity-fed systems provide limited buffer, but once pressure drops below a critical threshold, contamination risks increase. Backflow can introduce pathogens into the system, and treatment processes may be interrupted. Boil advisories become irrelevant if people lack the means to heat water safely. The misconception is that water stops flowing only when taps run dry. In reality, the quality of water can degrade long before supply is visibly interrupted. As this degradation continues, sanitation systems begin to fail. Wastewater treatment plants depend on continuous processes that cannot simply pause without consequences. When these systems shut down or operate below capacity, untreated or partially treated waste accumulates or is discharged, increasing environmental and health risks. Urban density amplifies this effect. The concentration of people in limited space accelerates the spread of contamination, especially when hygiene practices are compromised by limited water availability. The escalation becomes more pronounced as supply chains begin to fracture. Modern logistics operate on just-in-time delivery models, minimizing storage in favor of continuous replenishment. Retail locations hold limited inventory, often designed to last only a few days under normal consumption patterns. Without power, inventory tracking systems fail, refrigeration units stop, and electronic payment systems become unusable. Even if goods are physically present, the mechanisms to distribute them efficiently are compromised. Panic buying is often cited as the primary issue, but the deeper problem is systemic fragility in distribution networks. Transportation adds another layer of complexity. Fuel distribution relies on electrically powered pumps at multiple stages, from refineries to pipelines to local stations. Without power, even available fuel cannot be accessed easily. Emergency services have priority access to reserves, but those reserves are finite and depend on continuous replenishment. As vehicles become immobilized due to lack of fuel, mobility decreases, further limiting access to resources and emergency response capabilities. Communication degradation now reaches a critical threshold. With cellular networks failing and internet connectivity fragmented, coordination becomes localized and inconsistent. Information asymmetry emerges, where some areas may have partial updates while others operate in complete uncertainty. This lack of reliable information leads to decision paralysis or, conversely, impulsive actions based on incomplete data. The psychological effect is significant. Humans rely on information to assess risk, and when that information is unreliable, perceived risk often exceeds actual conditions, leading to behaviors that can worsen the situation. The transition into the next phase is marked by a shift from infrastructure failure to human-driven instability. Systems have not only failed, they have created conditions where individual and collective decisions begin to determine outcomes. The environment is no longer defined solely by physical constraints, but by how people respond to those constraints under pressure. The danger is no longer just technical, it becomes behavioral, and once that shift occurs, the complexity of the situation increases beyond